Have you ever looked at your child and realized you don't recognize them anymore? My name is Sarah, and I am 58 years old. For most of my life, if you'd asked me to describe myself, I would have said I was a wife, a high school English teacher, and, most importantly, a mother. My husband, Tom, passed away 8 years ago. That kind of loss, it cleaves your life in two. There's the before, and then there's the after. My after was held together by one person, my daughter, Emily. She was 26, a bright, funny, wonderfully messy girl who had her father's eyes and my stubborn streak. After Tom died, it was just us. We weren't rich. I was on a teacher's pension, and she was a graphic designer just starting out. Our house was a tiny, creaky 2-bedroom that always needed a new coat of paint, but it was ours. It was a home. Our Friday nights were sacred. We'd make cheap boxed pizza, open a bottle of wine that cost less than $10, and binge-watch British mystery shows. She told me everything. I knew about the boy in marketing who stole her lunch from the fridge, the terrible dates she went on, the small victories at her job. We were a team. I was so proud of the woman she was becoming. I thought I knew her. I thought I knew her heart, her mind, her soul. I was wrong. My world didn't just crack. It splintered into 1,000 pieces on a sunny Tuesday in June. The day Emily met Marcus, she called me from work, and her voice was different. It was breathless, sparkling. "Mom, you won't believe who I just met. I was at that coffee shop, the expensive one, trying to get a signal, and I literally spilled a latte all over this man. And Mom, he wasn't even mad, he just laughed." His name was Marcus Thorne. He was 40, divorced, and, as Emily put it, very successful. That was an understatement. Marcus wasn't just successful. Marcus was wealthy, old money, new money, and every kind of money in between. He was the CEO of some high-powered investment firm. His suits cost more than my car. He was handsome in that sharp, polished way that always looks like he's posing for a magazine cover. He was charming. He was polite, and I didn't like him. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on. It was a feeling, a cold spot in the room. When he looked at Emily, he didn't look at her the way her father used to look at me, like I was the only person in a crowded room. He looked at her like she was a beautiful new painting he'd just acquired, something to admire, something to own. Their romance wasn't a romance, it was an invasion. Suddenly, our Friday nights were gone. "Oh, Mom, I can't. Marcus is taking me to the opera." Then it was a charity gala. Then it was a last-minute weekend in the city. Emily changed. My messy, funny, pizza-loving girl was gone. In her place was a woman who was smooth. Her hair was always perfectly blown out. Her clothes were suddenly designer labels. She stopped talking about her job and started talking about events and social calendars. When I tried to talk to her, really talk to her, it was like knocking on a locked door. I'd say gently, "This is all happening so fast. Do you really know him?" She would give me that tight, polite smile I was starting to hate. "Mom, don't worry, I'm happy. Can't you just be happy for me?" But was she happy? Or was she just comfortable? 3 months after they met, she called me. No preamble. "Mom, we're engaged." I remember sitting down on my worn-out kitchen stool, the one Tom and I had bought at a yard sale. My hand was shaking. Engaged. "Emily, you've known him for 12 weeks. When you know, she said, her voice distant. It sounded rehearsed. It sounded like something he would say. The wedding was planned in 6 weeks. It wasn't a wedding. It was a corporate merger. I was completely shut out. A wedding planner, a woman with a sharp face and a clipboard, handled everything. Marcus's family, all equally polished and cold, flew in from New York and Boston. I was the mother of the bride, a quaint little accessory. And then the day came. The day it all broke. The wedding was at a sprawling estate that looked more like a museum than a home. I sat in the front row, clutching a small lace handkerchief that had been my mother's. Emily was breathtaking. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, but her eyes looked terrified. Then it was time for the vows. Marcus went first. His voice was smooth and confident. He spoke about her beauty, her grace, how she was the perfect partner to stand beside him. It was a lovely speech. It was also completely impersonal. He could have been reading it about anyone. Then it was Emily's turn. She took a shaky breath. I leaned forward, desperate to hear my daughter's voice, to hear the love, the joy. She turned to him, and she said, "Marcus, I vow to honor the life you've given me." My blood went cold. "The life you've given me." She kept going, her voice trembling. "I vow to protect our future and to cherish the stability you provide." I stopped breathing. The music, the flowers, the 200 guests. Everything faded to a deafening roar in my ears. Stability, not your heart, not your kindness, not your laugh. Stability. The word was a bullet. It was a confession. It was the answer to a question I hadn't even dared to ask. In that single moment, looking at my daughter in her $10,000 dress, I saw the truth. This wasn't a marriage. It was a transaction. The central question of my life planted itself in my heart, a shard of ice. My God, did my daughter marry him for money? That was the vow that broke me. The honeymoon was a 6-week tour of Europe. I saw pictures on social media. Emily smiling in front of the Eiffel Tower. Emily on a yacht in Greece. In every photo, she was perfectly posed. In every photo, Marcus's hand was firmly on her arm, or her waist. In every photo, her smile never ever reached her eyes. When she returned, she didn't come home. Not to our little house. She moved into Marcus's mansion. I called it a mansion. They called it the estate. It was a cold glass and steel monstrosity overlooking the ocean. The furniture was all white. The art on the walls was abstract and angry. There wasn't a single photograph, not of her, not of me, not of her father. It wasn't a home. It was a gallery. My daughter was the prize exhibit. I tried to bridge the gap. I really did. I would call. "Hi, honey, want to come over for pizza? We can watch that new mystery." "Oh, Mom," she'd sigh. That sigh. It was so full of exhaustion. "I can't. We have the fundraiser for the art museum tonight. You wouldn't like it. It's so stuffy." The external obstacles were everywhere. Marcus was the biggest one. He was always there, polite and smiling, but he was a wall between us. He'd answer her phone. "Oh, Sarah, Emily is just in a fitting. Can I take a message?" He spoke for her at dinners. "Emily is just passionate about the new children's wing, aren't you, darling?" And she would just nod. Then there were her new friends, wives of other executives. They were thin, sharp-edged women who looked through me, not at me. They would come over while I was visiting, and I'd sit there in my sensible knit sweater while they talked about boat shows and their surgeons in Switzerland. But the internal obstacles were worse. The self-doubt ate me alive. Did I do this? I'd ask myself, late at night, staring at the ceiling. Did I fail her? I replayed her entire childhood. Tom and I. We struggled. After he got sick, the medical bills piled up. I remembered Emily, just 22, sitting at our kitchen table with me, holding my hand as we tried to figure out how to keep the house. She'd been so strong. We'll be okay, Mom. We have each other. Had I shown her that love wasn't enough, had our simple life felt so much like a struggle to her that she ran toward the first man who offered her a golden cage. The guilt was a heavy, wet blanket I couldn't escape. I was grieving the loss of my daughter. But she was still alive. It was a living funeral. The escalation, when it came, was fast and brutal. It started with the locket. For her birthday, I gave her the most precious thing I owned. It was a simple silver locket. It had been my grandmother's, then my mother's, then mine. Inside was a tiny, faded picture of my mom. It was our family. It was our simple, powerful love. Emily's eyes filled with tears when I gave it to her. "Oh, Mom, it's beautiful." She hugged me. It was the first real hug I'd felt from her in months. A week later, I was at her house. She'd asked me to pick up a package while she was at a spa day. I went into her bedroom, a room the size of my entire downstairs, to find a pen. I opened a drawer in her vanity, and there it was, my locket, thrown in, tangled up with price tags, stray cufflinks, and what looked like a diamond earring, just discarded. I picked it up. It was cold. I stood there, in that sterile, silent room, and just broke. I quietly closed the drawer, got the package, and left. I didn't say a word. What could I say? Things got worse. My old roof, the one Tom and I had patched up a dozen times, finally gave out. A winter storm left a massive, leaking stain on my bedroom ceiling. I was on a fixed income. A new roof was $5,000 I did not have. I put buckets down. I tried to ignore it. But the rain kept coming. Finally, swallowed by shame and desperation. I called Emily. Honey, I'm in a bit of a bind. I explained about the roof. There was that sigh again. Mom, really? You should have had that fixed ages ago. How much is it? I told her. Fine, she said, her voice sharp with annoyance. I'll have Marcus send a check. She didn't say, "Oh, Mom, are you okay?" She didn't say, "Let me come see." She said, "I'll have Marcus send a check." A check arrived 2 days later, by FedEx. It wasn't from Emily. It was from Thorn Capital Management. It wasn't even signed by Marcus. It was signed by some A. Peters, executive assistant. My daughter was outsourcing her love, and it was being paid for by an assistant. I cried as I endorsed that check. I cashed it. I fixed the roof. And a little part of me died. The all is lost moment. The absolute rock bottom came on October 14th. It was Tom's birthday, my late husband's birthday. For 8 years, Emily and I had a tradition. We always spent the day together. We'd go to the cemetery, leave flowers, and then we'd come home and bake his favorite cake, a truly terrible, overly sweet pineapple upside-down cake. We'd eat it, tell stories about him, and laugh and cry. It was our day. I had called her a week before. You'll come. Right, Em. For your dad. Of course, "Mom," she'd said. "Of course. I'll be there by noon." Noon came. I had the flour out, the brown sugar, the can of pineapples. 1 o'clock. No Emily. 2 o'clock. I called. Straight to voicemail. 3 o'clock. I called again. Voicemail. My heart was pounding. Fear, anger, despair, they were all churning in my stomach. At 4, my phone finally rang. It was her. "Mom, I am so sorry," she said. Her voice rushed. I heard wind in the background and a boat horn. "Emily, where are you?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Ugh, it's a thing," she said. "Marcus. He surprised me. We're in the Hamptons, on his friend's yacht. It was totally last minute. I couldn't get away. And the signal is terrible. I feel awful. We'll do the cake next week." Okay, I snapped. All the months of pain, of silence, of being pushed away, of being replaced by money and status and yachts, it all erupted. "No, Emily, we will not do it next week. It's your father's birthday, and you're on a yacht." "Mom, don't be dramatic. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal." I was shouting now, clutching the phone, staring at the bag of flour on my counter. "He was your father. This life, it's poisoned you. That man, that money. It's all you care about." My question, the one I've been screaming inside my head for a year. It's true, isn't it? Isn't it? You married him for his money. You sold your entire soul for the Hamptons. There was a long, cold silence on the other end. And then, her voice. It wasn't my daughter's. It was the voice of a stranger. Cold, sharp, and full of something I couldn't name. "Maybe I did," she whispered. "Maybe I was tired of leaking roofs. Maybe I was tired of worrying about every single bill. Maybe I was tired of boxed pizza and cheap wine. Maybe I wanted a life where I didn't have to struggle." She took a breath. You've had your love. You had Dad. You don't know what it's like. Just leave me alone." Click. She hung up. I stood there. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I looked at the ingredients for the cake, and I just slid down the kitchen cabinets until I was sitting on the cold linoleum. It was true. My daughter was gone. She had confirmed it. She chose the money. She chose the cage. And in that moment, I let her go. I had no fight left. All was, well and truly, lost. The silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was an absence, a black hole in my life. I didn't call her. She didn't call me. Weeks turned into a month. Thanksgiving came. I ate a frozen dinner, alone, watching the parade on TV. Christmas came. I didn't put up a tree. What was the point? I fell into a gray, listless fog, but you can only stay in the dark for so long. Sometime in January, I woke up and the sun was streaming through my window. I looked at the new, perfectly patched ceiling in my bedroom, the ceiling her blood money had paid for, and I got angry. Not at her, at him, at the situation. And then I got busy. I threw out all the old, rotting junk in my garden. I joined a community gardening club. I started volunteering at the library, reading to children. I repainted my kitchen a bright, cheerful yellow. I filled my house with life again. My life. I was healing. I was building a new after. I was Sarah. Just Sarah. Not Tom's widow. Not Emily's mother. Just me. And I began to realize that my simple, struggling life It was wonderful. It was real. It was full of kind people and good dirt and quiet joys. I found a new kind of peace. I was still heartbroken over Emily, but I wasn't broken. My transformation was quiet. It was the budding of a crocus in the snow. I was going to be okay. And then, in late March, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Hello, Mrs. Sarah Jensen." The voice was professional. "Male. My name is... I am an attorney. I'm calling on behalf of... Well, I was retained by your daughter, Emily Thorne." My heart hammered. "Is she okay? Is there an accident?" "No, ma'am. Not an accident." He paused. "Ma'am, are you aware of the news about Thorne Capital Management? The news?" "No, I don't. I don't follow the financial news." "I see." He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Jensen, Marcus Thorne was arrested by federal agents 2 days ago. He's being charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and racketeering. It's a Ponzi scheme, a massive one. He's ruined. The assets are all frozen. The money. Ma'am, the money is gone. All of it." I sat down. I think I said, "Oh." "Your daughter," the lawyer continued, "is not implicated in the criminal charges, but she is, well, she is left with nothing. The estate is being seized. I'm calling because she listed you as her next of kin. She may need a place to stay." I hung up the phone. I didn't feel anything. I was numb. It was too much. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I just waited. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, there was a knock on my door. A soft, hesitant knock. I opened it. It was Emily, but it wasn't. It was my Emily. My old Emily. Her $1 million hair was matted, stringy with rain. She was wearing old sweatpants and a rumpled t-shirt I recognized from her college days. Her face was pale, blotchy, and streaked with tears. Her expensive designer shoes were scuffed and muddy. She was just standing there, holding a single, small backpack. She looked like a lost child. She looked up at me, her eyes so full of a pain I couldn't even comprehend. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice was raw. I didn't know what to say. So I said the only thing that mattered. "He's gone." "He's gone," she repeated, nodding, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. "The money, it was all a lie. All of it." And then, the question, the one that had lived in my heart for over a year, I had to ask, but it had changed. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was a plea. "Em, that day, on the phone, you said you married him for it? For the money?" She flinched as if I'd hit her, and then she just shattered. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, her body shaking so hard I had to hold her up. "I did," she cried into my shoulder. "I did. But not for me. Not like you think." I pulled her inside, out of the rain, and sat her down on our old, worn sofa. I wrapped her in the quilt her grandmother had made. I made her a cup of tea, my hands shaking. She finally looked at me. "Mom, I was so stupid and so scared." She took a breath. That first month, with Marcus, it was a whirlwind. It was exciting. And yes, it was easy. The money was... It was nice not to worry. But then, she said, her voice dropping, just before the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. The teacup slipped in my hand. What? I was pregnant, she whispered. I was so happy. I told him, and he... Her face crumpled. He was furious. He said it would complicate things. He said we should take care of it. He told me it wasn't the right time, that it would ruin our image. She was choking on the words, and I was a coward. I was so in love with the idea of him, of this life, and I was so terrified. I thought if I married him, if I locked it down, he would change. He would have to. He would be a father. My mind flew back to the wedding, to the vow. The vow, I said, the realization dawning on me. Yes, she sobbed. When I said, I vow to protect our future. I wasn't talking about his future. I was talking about my babies. And when I said cherish the stability, I was trying to convince myself. I was trying to make it true. I was vowing to my unborn child that I would give them a stable life, no matter what, even if it meant staying with him. The vow that broke me, it was never for him. It was a desperate, terrified promise from a mother to her child. The answer to my central question was yes. She had married him for money, but not for greed. She did it out of fear. Fear that she would be a single mother. Fear that she would end up like me, struggling, counting pennies, with a leaky roof. Fear that she couldn't do it alone. My transformation was complete in that instant. The last piece of my anger, my judgment, my resentment, it all evaporated. It was replaced by a wave of empathy so powerful it stole my breath. My daughter wasn't a monster. She was a child who had been trapped, blackmailed, and broken by a man, and by her own fear. And the baby. I whispered, afraid of the answer. She looked down, and for the first time, she put a hand on her stomach. He stressed me out so much. I lost it. About 2 months after the wedding. I didn't say anything. I just moved onto the sofa and pulled her head into my lap. I stroked her hair, just like I did when she was 6 years old and afraid of the thunder. She had lost everything. The money, the house, the husband, the baby. You're not trapped anymore. Emily, I whispered, tears streaming down my own face. You're home. You're finally home. My story started with a question I was too afraid to ask, and it was answered by a vow I completely misunderstood. For an entire year, I looked at my daughter's life, the clothes, the house, the trips, the car, and I judged her. I built a case against her in my own mind. I saw her actions, but I never once stopped to ask about the fear that was driving them. I filled in the silence with my own worst assumptions. I spent a year grieving a daughter who was never really gone. She was just lost. She was trapped. She was screaming for help in a language I couldn't understand. I built a wall of my own resentment, brick by brick, when all she ever needed, was for me to build a bridge. The emotional truth of my story is this. We so often judge the actions of our loved ones without ever understanding the hidden fears that drive them. My purpose in telling you this, the why, is because I want to motivate you to ask, to communicate, to offer grace before judgment. We see our children, our friends, our partners, making choices we don't understand. We see them pulling away, And our first instinct is to feel hurt, to get angry, to build that wall, just like I did. I'm sharing this with you because I know how easy it is to see the outside, the polish, the new car, the cold smile, and to forget the terrified human heart that is beating inside. Please, don't let your assumptions become the wedge that drives your family apart. My call to action for you is simple. If there is someone in your life who is pulling away, someone you feel you are losing to a lifestyle, or a new partner, or a bad decision, don't just judge them. Don't just write them off in your head as lost. Reach out, and don't just ask, "How are you?" Ask the real questions. Ask them with love, not with accusation. Ask them, "Are you happy?" Ask them, Are you safe? That one question, "Are you safe?" might be the bridge they need. It might be the one question that saves them. Ask them before the silence becomes permanent. My daughter is living with me now. She's in her old room. It's a long road. She's healing. We are healing. We're baking pineapple upside-down cakes again. And we're talking. We're finally talking. Thank you for listening. That was my story. Now, we would love to hear yours. Have you ever experienced a major misunderstanding in your family? Please share your experience and wisdom in the comments below. If this story touched you, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our meaningful stories every week. Thank you for being a part of this community.